Welcome to Corralling the Chaos podcast, where we talk publicly about the things you're worried about privately. My name is Angela Leah, and I'm your host. This is the event industry podcast for companies and crew, where we're going to go deep and nothing is off limits. Welcome back to another episode of Corralling the Chaos. Today, we are going to talk about educating the industry from the inside out. You know, we often talk about here on this podcast about nobody from outside of the industry really understands all that it takes to make these epic experiences happen. And so today we're going to kind of dive deeper into that from the inside out, as we said. And to help us do that, we have Zack Grant with us. He is the CEO of C's Productions, which is a San Diego-based full-service AV company. He has been in the industry for over 20 years and started his career by pushing cases for his dad, who founded C's, and was an audio engineer for nearly 40 years. Just want to say that's a very common story that I always love to hear. You kind of start that way, and now look at you, you're running your own business. But Zack enjoys the fact that every day is full of new challenges. He likes an ever-evolving puzzle that has to be continually solved and forces him to keep growing and evolving, which again, for all of you AV production company owners out there, probably sounds very familiar. So welcome, Zack, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited about having you. I've known you for a few years now, and it's been really fun to watch your organization grow and change and explore different areas, which we're going to talk about today. But first, tell us about C's Productions and your career from warehouse to CEO there.
Yeah, so I started, like I said, pushing cases for my dad, like through high school, skipping basically, the weekends where my friends were out partying and stuff. And I would go help him, push the cases and, set up sound systems and whatnot. I was basically his A2 systems guy for a long time. Truthfully, I never thought it was going to be more than that. I was like in a band after high school. I moved to Texas and I thought I was going to do that, but things changed and went to school for business. And I saw an opportunity when I applied for this mentorship program within our college. And I actually won. A few people were chosen out of the whole, whatever, all the, can't think of word, but all of the people that went to college. And so I was lucky enough to get chosen. And the premise of that was to basically take something and apply like real-time experience from a mentor and what you're learning in college to like anything you wanted. So I was like, all right, my dad's been doing this and he's an audio engineer, but he's not, like a great business guy. So I'm going to take some of what I'm learning with the mentor's help and start applying. And so that started to turn the business from more of like just a sound company that was, he was a great engineer, but I always felt like it was a little bit more of a hobby for him that he just really loved to do.
Yeah.
And so I took that and applied that, turned it into a business. We had some success, started hiring people. I worked my way from driving trucks and, working in the warehouse to running operations, and eventually replaced myself enough times that, then I was the one leading the company and setting out direction and, implementing software and process and all those things to just continually take it to the next level.
I love it. So I want to talk a little bit about, I feel like you guys do things a little bit differently at C's as far as educating our industry, which I wish we did a better job of, not just for those in it, right? Like whether it's, running from moving from an operator to business owner. I think Tom Stimpson has coined the phrase accidental entrepreneurs, which I think there's a lot of those in our industry. But talk to us a little bit about what C's is doing to educate our industry, because I feel like you guys are doing things a little bit differently. For example, I know you host a quarterly AV industry speaking event called C's Shop Talk. And then you're also starting a podcast to help demystify AV production. So how do you see some of these activities contributing to both the industry and to your business?
Well, I mean, first off, we're not out there trying to be the biggest company, right? There's a lot of people that can fill that space, and that was never really our goal. From the start, we were always trying to do things a little bit different, be more of kind of a boutique AV company, and that kind of stuff. So the idea for for starting the podcast and doing the shop talks and all these things really stemmed from some of our clients kind of being afraid to go after AV because it just seemed like this really difficult thing to comprehend for them. And I was like, man, like if they knew a little bit more about what we do, maybe they would feel more comfortable selling, right, to their clients, right, because they better understand it. Because I know for myself, I'm much more comfortable selling something that I understand.
Yeah.
So I'm I'm basically out there, with that idea going, hey, I'm running this huge AV company. I mean, not huge, but I'm running this AV company and I can't even run, the consoles that all of our techs use myself. So if I can do it, you guys can all do that. So
Yeah.
through, some of this education we started doing, kind of realized that I enjoy that part of the business, and just kind of doing that. And we're not like a company that's, like we're really open. That's just kind of who I am. Really open person in general. So that's part of our culture to be open and share, if you will, our secret sauce with people. And especially now after COVID, there's so many new people in our industry, new event planners, and there a lot of them just getting started. So um, we want to be a resource for them to learn more about what we do, and also be more educate them that like AV is a lot more than just the gear, right? There's value beyond that, right? We're a company that does all kinds of events, hundreds per year of all different kinds of things. And so we've seen, a lot of the things that work really well, the things that don't. So, we can go to some of these meetings and, way before maybe typically you would, or they would think they would involve an AV partner and help guide them to maybe a better resolution than they would come up with on their own, right? And not everybody realizes that there is that value in the partnership with an AV company.
Yeah.
And so I guess I would say, to the people out there who maybe aren't getting that value, maybe it's time to look for a company too that is, giving you that value to help make your events as good as they can be.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to dig, to your point, right? You shouldn't have to dig for what the value is,
Right.
right? If you're working with somebody where you're constantly having to dig and ask questions to kind of get to the meat of it versus somebody who knows who they are, what they want to be, right? And
Right.
can articulate that in the right way. I think that's really important. And then you said something really interesting that when I joined the industry, it was probably 10 years ago, when I joined it directly. And I felt like things were very different then. I felt like everyone was skeptical of everybody. There's still some skepticism for sure. That would be my wish that that would go away because I think our industry is full of that. But I feel like that has shifted. And you're talking about being an open person, right?
Yeah.
And teaching and educating and sharing. And I felt like in the past, everyone was like, no, it's my secret sauce. I'm not sharing or telling anybody anything. And so I feel like that's changed a little bit. Do you?
A little bit for sure. When we're working with people, there has to be like a high degree of trust between, client and the AV company, right? Because they're trusting us basically with their baby, right? They're trying to host an event for
Yeah.
maybe thousands of people and they're trying to get a message across to those people. So if the AV falls short, it ends up being distracting from that message. So trust is major in what we do for sure. And yeah, I mean that is like I said, I've been like probably too open at times, but it's just part of who we are as a company, and
Yeah.
I
Well, I
much
think that
prefer to
builds
be that way.
trust.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and
I mean,
confidence.
intentional or not, yeah, trust is a huge piece of what we do.
Absolutely. Well, what's your biggest frustration about our industry?
Um, in general, pretty happy with most things. I do really enjoy the day to day challenges, if you will, because every day is different. I'm definitely not the kind of person that likes to sit in front of the computer and just do the same thing every single day. So I do enjoy that. Some might view that as something that they don't like. But for me, I feel like I do get sometimes frustrated with AV being viewed as just a commodity. And a lot of times you can see that through things like the RFP process, where, and this isn't everybody, but RFPs, a lot of them will come through and say, okay, send us all of, every piece of gear, line item. We want to see, your labor rate sheet. We want to see every little piece, right? But for me, it's like, I feel like that conversation, for one, should be more like you're hiring an employee, right? You got to build that relationships. I want to know well, I guess what I'm trying to say is through that RFP process, it's hard to convey the intangibles and the other value, things like, experience, creativity, trust, authenticity. Like, I can't put that on a piece of paper when you're just looking at a list of gear.
And do you think our industry has done that to itself? Like, why do people view it as a commodity?
Well, I think it comes from, 40 years of doing things the same way, right? So
And sell, yeah, and maybe like selling it as a
it
commodity,
is.
right? I think our industry's gotten a lot better over the last few years, to your point, right? Selling the creativity, the people, the reliability, the confidence, versus selling
Yeah,
gear.
it is definitely getting better for sure. But even still, there's only a few, like, for instance, like, you guys are in software. There's only a few, like, AV quoting softwares, which essentially all look kind of the same. So it's hard to kind of like spill that creativity into that, and convey all those things. So um, in general, yeah, it is getting better. But yeah, it comes down to trust, and it's a relationship between client and partner, and so you know
Yeah, and it's the companies who can master telling their story, right? It's not selling their gear.
right,
It's telling a story, because that's what these events are anyway, right?
right,
It's telling a story to your audience, getting them to feel emotion. So if you can do that through the sales process, that's very different than here's a 10-page document of all the line items. Now, I'm not sure
exactly.
that really evokes emotion. It's kind of like, yeah, you're going to be spreadsheeted and compared apples to apples. So I think that nuance is people who know how to tell a good story,
Yeah, and that
because
and
you're being hired to tell a good story.
right, and that's a good point. Like, again, the RPs where you're looking at those lists of gear, like, that is what it's attempting to do, is make everything apples to apples. But, like, a full service company that is, maybe specializing in corporate work might be completely different than, a different one. And so it's not really capturing the value. I mean, we all know that, like, those bids are not ever apples to apples. They never are.
Right.
And how do I say, this labor rate, though it maybe is a little bit higher, you're going to get, a superstar guy versus this person
Yeah.
from another company who, maybe their mindset is a little bit different. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely a challenge. I don't think our industry is quite solved yet, but I think they're trying and they're starting
Yeah.
to. And I
Yeah.
think that that's going to allow for higher bill rates, better margins, better outcomes when you can sell your story that matches the price point that you're charging. So yeah, I think we're on our way. Well, a lot of people throw around the word experience. So I want to talk about that word specifically, because I know your company in particular has invested in headcount around that word experience, and content, with your podcast being centered around that theme of experiences and what does that mean. But what does that word mean to you? And how do you think your clients have felt the benefit of your focus on experience?
So I think that for a long time, there's been a tendency to kind of just do the same thing over and over, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. And sometimes we fall short of going back after an event and looking at, okay, what really worked well and what didn't. Did we accomplish what we set out as an event to accomplish or not? And how do we improve? So when we're partnering with, a client, we're trying to get in at the ground level and be like, okay, what is the point of this event, right? Like, what's the message? Who's going to be there? What are we trying to say? And so we try to design, a full system, not just gear, that is going to basically convey that message and create an immersive experience where people, when they walk in, they're not thinking about anything else. Their focus is on that message, and they're not being distracted by technical issues, right? Because we all know, we've sat in events where all of a sudden a mic cuts out, or the video goes out or something like that, right? Which detracts. So we're very focused on building an experience you know, starting with, creative design and all this stuff, just something that is going to really, like I said, immerse the attendees, not distract from the message you're trying to get, and really serve the purpose and the intention that people are setting out to, accomplish in the first place.
Yeah, that North Star is the experience, not the price point, not the how. It's
Right.
the outcome. It's the experience, right?
Right. That's what a full service AV company should be delivering. Like if you're a corporate producer and you know what you need, it's fine. There's a ton of great, gear houses out there that you can get gear from. But, if you don't know exactly what you need, there's great companies out there that offer full service that can deliver, you know, exactly that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to go back to the RFP process for a minute. So when we were prepping for this episode, you brought this up and said you felt like that's something that maybe needs to be reevaluated is the RFP process. So how do you think that process needs to change?
Um, yeah, so it's not to say that every RFP functions this way, right? There are
Right.
some that are better than others, but
But I bet there's a lot of similarities
there
that
is,
companies
yeah.
see as they come across their desk.
I
Yep.
mean, again, a lot of them, I feel like the point of the RFP is to try to make all bids apples to apples, level the playing field, and especially when you're working on like government or university contracts, it's almost impossible to convey all of those things. Like I said, that don't show up as a piece of gear or a person, and often they just go with whoever is the lowest bidder, right? And that's just kind of, I feel like, a losing strategy. So to me, I suppose if I'm on the other end of this would be more like I'm hiring an employee, right? I want to get to know them, take them to lunch and find out if, like, do we jive, right? Is this going to be a good working relationship? And to me, gear, yeah, of course, like we're going to be conscious of budget and all that stuff. But when it gets into line item stuff, again, we're going back to trust. Like if you're hiring me to do the job from the beginning, like you should trust that I'm going to put the gear that I need and the people I need on that thing. And we can have a discussion about budget as a whole. That's fine. Like happy to do that. But sometimes it can be, frustrating when it's like, oh, we don't need this, one little thing here and this little thing here. And it's like, just, let's just talk about it as a whole. What are we trying to get to? What do we want to accomplish here? And, yeah.
So is that a sales function? Like, do you think like typically great salespeople don't allow themselves to be put in a box, right? They're going to not push back. That's the wrong word, but they're going to challenge and say, well, great, the RFP, sure, I'll fill that out. But can we have a different conversation
Yeah.
first, right? So I feel like the best salespeople are the ones that do that, but also the companies as a whole, right? I feel like so many times the RFP comes and they just kind of fill it out and send it back. So like, how do we as an industry make that happen to change the conversation to where it's not just you're going to be dropped into a spreadsheet and comparing, columns, if you will. So how do we as an industry educate the end client so we're not constantly put in that corner?
Well, I think, like you said, it's kind of starting to happen. I think for me, the big realization happened in the beginning of COVID when we had everything cancel and we realized, oh, all of our proposals are just like gear and labor, and we weren't even charging like pre-production or any of this stuff. We realized, oh, this cancels, and all of the tens or hundreds of hours we worked on these events, like we're not going to get paid anything
Yeah.
for this, right?
Yeah.
And what's the difference between my gear versus somebody else's gear? Everybody has gear, right? Maybe not the same gear, but everybody has gear, and you can get it anywhere. So like, what is the true value of my company versus somebody else? And that was just, I feel like, the wake up call that we had to, as a company, start doing a better job of like conveying that value and being more of a partner to clients, and just making them aware that there's so much more that could be gained from the relationship and working together than well, send me what lights do you want, how many of those lights do you want, and how many
Right.
speakers, and what size screen.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
At
secondary.
that point, you might as well just send them your entire rate card. Here's the list of everything we have. Here's the price. You put it together. And
Right.
like, otherwise it takes, why bother,
Yeah,
right? Just put your catalog online and be done.
there's plenty of companies that'll do that, and that have way bigger inventories than we do, but that's
Yeah.
not what we do, so.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's yeah, I mean, my takeaway from that is, selling the experience. You talked about selling value, talked about being a good storyteller, right? So I think there's a number of things, just minor shifts, right? Rather than just being reactive and a RFP came in, fill it out, send it back. Like, let's pause for a minute. Does this warrant a conversation? Because I feel like if I'm a company, I'm putting that out, I'm going to appreciate somebody who's going to make me think about something differently than I'm thinking about it now, right?
Yeah.
Anybody that gets me to think about something, they have my attention versus just responding to exactly what I'm asking for. So I think that's definitely an opportunity that our industry has to just make your client think about it, challenge them in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, one of the things we strive to do is like we try and make our clients' life easy because, usually they've got a million other things beyond AV to worry about, food,
Right.
hotels, travel, the program, guest
Yeah.
speakers and all this stuff. And it's like, if they're worrying about, how many speakers and is this the right format of this? And like, what about the load-in times? And do I have enough? Like, it's distracting from the things that they should be focused on. So our goal really as a company is to make our clients' life as easy as possible by partnering with them, and taking as much of a load off as possible.
Yep. That's the name of the game. Well, one final question that we like to ask every guest at the end is, what do you hope for our industry?
Yeah. So it's funny. I was listening to your podcast, another episode you did with a buddy of mine, Jay Okana over at Reaction AV, and yeah, and so you guys were talking about recognition of the people in this industry, and I think that is the top takeaway. I mean, if anything, COVID taught us that we are still like invisible, right? Despite the fact that our industry is like $1 trillion industry, which you know people still don't know we exist, and so it's so weird. People don't realize you know all the movies that they watch in theaters, the events they go to, concerts, corporate, sports, Super Bowl. People don't realize all of the people behind the scenes there, and especially something like the Super Bowl. I mean, they have a commercial break to stage it from a football stadium into a concert for like the biggest act in the world. It's incredible the amount of the work that goes into that. So um, I think we have to do a better job of having a voice, and Michael Strickland did a lot to try and change that through COVID, but even his best attempt wasn't enough. So I feel like we all need to come together and stand up and have some representation, um, you know, more than we have right now. Because I can't think of any other $1 trillion industry that goes unnoticed like we do. You hear about all the airline bailouts and the bank bailouts and all this stuff, but there's nothing. Those of us that were lucky enough to get idle loans are paying them back with interest. There's
Yeah.
no bailouts for
Yeah.
us. So
Yeah. We're gonna do something with that topic. I don't know what yet, but it is such an important topic that has really negative consequences for our industry. And I think it's an opportunity where it can have such positive consequences if it's played right. We had an organization, for those of you that don't know, called the Live Events Coalition, on our podcast. I highly recommend checking them out. They work tirelessly for our industry. They have lobbyists. They are trying to create a voice for us, but it takes time, it takes money, and it takes people, right? And I think the more we come together and kind of shine a spotlight on all these people, like I was even sitting in a movie this last weekend, and my family asked me to sit through the credits, so I did, which I normally don't do that, but I did. And it was fascinating. I mean, it's even, the person who's in charge of catering,
yeah,
like there's so much
those
that goes
credits
into it's
roll
not
for
just the
like
stars of the show, right? That's not
yeah,
who makes it happen. There's a whole other team and
yeah,
travel, like you said, and all these things that happen that, the movies, kudos for them. At least they, even though it's at the end, and again, I'm guilty. Most people are never going to see who did the catering. I happened to see it that day, but right, but
yeah,
at least there's something there. And in our industry, there's nothing. So
yeah,
how do we shine a spotlight on, number one, just educating them on everything that goes into it? I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it until someone does it. I would love for somebody to do a documentary on our industry. because I think it would be fascinating because everyone in the world consumes entertainment and events. Again, whether it's a TV show, movie, sporting event, concert, festival, all the things you just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
We all know what that is.
Right.
But until somebody really educates on all the things that go into that, we're always going to take it for granted.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think there's a huge opportunity for as an industry, we want the spotlight shine. And I think we got to figure out what exactly does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know the exact formula for it, but I mean, doing things like what you guys are doing right now with this podcast and what we're trying to do with ours. I mean, it's about, putting the message out there as much as you can, right? Being that voice, and not waiting around for somebody else to do it. So, I mean, that is what it is.
Well, I think there's a lot that we can all kind of take from this episode. I know we talked about the RFP process and the opportunity companies have to not just be responsive and just respond and react, but instead be proactive and really engage your client on a different level so you're not kind of stuck in the corner. We also talked about the importance of the word experience and what that means, and that you're not just executing, the outcome is to create an experience for your client, an experience for the attendees. And I know, Zack, you all have a podcast that you are launching where you talk about those things and so much more, really anything and everything event industry related.
Right.
And the name of that podcast is called C's Backstage. And it's launching on September 7th. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're doing it the first and third Thursday of every month. Is that right?
Yep, that's the idea.
Awesome. And then for those of you that enjoy podcasts, I would highly recommend it. I know Zack and his team very well. They do great things, great content, definitely some of the thought leaders that are out there. So I think you will enjoy that. You can find that at their website, which is cspro.com, as well as their social handles. So I would encourage you, mark the date, September 7th. That's a Thursday, where they're going to drop their first episode. So congrats on that. I know that's no small feat, and I will look forward to listening in on that.
Yeah, thank you. We're really excited.
That's awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening in. If you like what you hear, be sure you hit subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, reach out to us at podcast@lasso.io. Thanks, everybody.